know, something that's always bugged me when playing my Mega Drive was that I only ever had the standard 3-button controller. It's not much use on titles like Mortal Kombat, for example, where you'd need at least 5 buttons to really play it properly. So when on the hunt for a 6-button controller, I came across this one by RetroFighters, the brawlerGen. It's promising to be a much more comfortable 6-button alternative for the Mega Drive. It includes a joystick, and it also works with the Saturn. Now, since I've been very happy with RetroFighters' offerings on the Dreamcast and the N64 in the past, I had to try this out. Hello fellow gamers, and how does the brawlerGen fare as both a Mega Drive and a Saturn controller? We were first graced with the RetroFighters brawlerGen back in late 2019, with both console and USB versions being made available, the latter often being touted as an alternative controller for the Mega Drive Mini, which had come out around about that same time. For a long time though, it has been difficult to get a hold of the console-only variant here in the UK without paying over the odds for one or getting one second hand. Even today, it's still on back order on many websites. So this led me instead to get a hold of the blue and grey limited edition version, which, besides its colour scheme, is identical to the original. It is a bit strange though that the supposed limited edition one is more readily available than the bog standard one, but here we are. So inside the box, you don't get a lot. The controller itself with a long ass cable, a brief manual, and a RetroFighters keyring, which is typically included in the boxes of retro fighting controllers anyway. And going back to the manual, well, there's not a lot in here that explains how the controller works. That's because for the most part, there's not really much to tell. It's pretty much plug and play. So let's take a closer look at this controller then. One of its main outstanding features has got to be its shape. It features a pair of elongated grips which fits in the hands actually rather comfortably, and are far more exaggerated than compared to what you'd find by default on either the Mega Drive or the Saturn controllers. It features a D-pad which faithfully recreates the one found on the Mega Drive controller, but it's about the same size as the one from the Saturn. You might be forgiven in thinking this is actually a remake of the Saturn's D-pad, but when you look carefully, the shape of each direction on the pad lends itself more to what's found on a Mega Drive controller instead. The D-pad feels, well, fine under the thumb. It's firm enough on each press, and it's positioned nicely. Beside the D-pad is a tiny little joystick. Now, at first glance you'd think it's probably too small, but actually it's the same size as the analog stick found on the Striker DC for the Dreamcast. It feels much the same as the Striker DCs too, and that one I've already proven to be a really good controller. There's a card in the corner if you want to know more about it. It's positioned a little out of the way, so it's still easy enough to reach with my thumb, and it should prove interesting when trying to use it on 3D titles on the Saturn. The 6-button layout is the same as what you'd find on the Mega Drive and Saturn's original controllers, and I think the buttons have been recreated rather faithfully here. They're firm to the press, and they feel good. All seems well so far. Other buttons present on the front here are the start button, well obviously, and the mode button. Now for those who don't know, when the original 6-button Mega Drive controller was being developed, some games didn't play ball with it. To get around this, Sega added a mode button on the shoulder which, when held down when the system was switched on, it would make it register as a 3-button controller instead. The same mode button is present here, and it works the same way. There are 2 other buttons I've neglected to mention so far, and those are the shoulder buttons. These are here for the benefit of the Saturn rather than the Mega Drive, where these buttons would have never been used. I have to admit that both are pretty good size and they press in satisfyingly enough, but I'm not liking the position of these. When holding the controller, my fingers are naturally resting on these sloped bits behind the shoulder buttons, you know? This seems like a better place to put them than where they've actually been put. So to reach them, I'd need to bring my fingers across awkwardly, which makes trying to use them feel rather troublesome. The controller also features a 10-foot cable, so you can use it really far away from your screen, and it splits at the end with a connector for each the Mega Drive and the Saturn. So now I've reached the connectors, let's put them to use and see what this controller is like on both systems. Plugging in the controller and giving it a whirl with a number of games, it seems to work rather well. Despite feeling rather light in my hands, the grips played their role adequately, keeping the controller planted between my palms. The buttons and the D-pad were responsive and, well, generally, just felt like a regular Mega Drive controller, with handles. There were moments though where trying to press two buttons at once proved difficult, like when trying to pull off Sub-Zero's sliding attack when you need to press back and high kick and low kick all together, you know? But quickly switching back to the official 3-button controller just proved the game was just very particular about this. It wasn't a fault of the brawlerGen, and after a little practice, I started getting the hang of it. Knowing that the Mega Drive games were really only made for a D-pad, I tried the controller, and in particular that joystick, on the likes of Virtual Racing. It recognised the 6-button controller correctly, though it seems those extra buttons only let you cycle through the different camera angles. What a great benefit that is, eh? When using that joystick to control my F1 car though, I quickly found that it took just a little less than half the joystick travel to register an input, which threw me off a bit. But once I got used to it though, I thought it was pretty good. I imagine this would be more comfortable on long play sessions than using the D-pad alone. Switching from one Sega racing game to another, the first Saturn game I tried the brawlerGen out on was Sega Rally. And quickly I was finding that the grips were really useful for this. I could keep a much firmer grip on the controller when trying to navigate sharp turns and overtake other cars on the track. Using that joystick proved to be quite good too, ensuring my thumb doesn't go sore after more than a few furious laps around the mountain track. However, there's something to take note of here. Sega Rally doesn't support the Saturn's original 3D control pad. When I tried one out last year, the game instead recognised it as a steering wheel. With the brawlerGen, it doesn't even do that. It recognises it as a regular controller. And why is that? Well, you know that joystick? It ain't analog. That's right, it only mimics the D-pad, registering 8 axes of movement. Now, okay, I can understand this being a thing for the Mega Drive, but this should not be the case for the Saturn, especially when the 3D control pad exists. If you're going to put a joystick on a controller that works on the Saturn, you should make it register as a 3D control pad. To further prove that this joystick isn't analog, I loaded up the Sonic World segment from Sonic Jam, which is one of the few games I have that fully supports the official 3D control pad. Turning in a circle reveals that only 8 axes are registered, so Sonic follows a sort of octagon path, whereas with the 3D control pad, Sonic's turning is smooth and circular. Another problem with the brawlerGen in this game were the shoulder buttons, where my concern for overstretching to use them was certainly warranted. Trying to turn the camera on this with those shoulder buttons was made rather more difficult because of their high placement. Still though, I thought I'd try to at least give the brawlerGen a fighting chance, so I loaded up another Saturn game that incorrectly recognised the original 3D control pad, Panzer Dragoon. Now before, the 3D control pad was recognised by this game as an arcade stick, meaning that I was restricted to an area of attack that was only about 2/3 of the screen. However, since the brawlerGen is actually just a regular controller with a joystick, that meant that we still had the comfortable movement of a joystick, but we aren't limited in our aiming range. Now this certainly made playing Panzer Dragoon a little more fulfilling. However, we have the same issue here with moving the camera, as the shoulder buttons are harder to reach than on official controllers. So, does the brawlerGen achieve what it sets out to do? Well, I guess it does. It works really well as a Mega Drive controller, it's comfortable, the buttons are responsive, and that little digital joystick is handy for some games that might normally have you ripping your thumb off when using a D-pad for long sessions. But by making this work for the Saturn as well, it's disappointing. It could have been so much more. Those shoulder buttons should be moved back into a more comfortable position. The joystick should be a proper analog one when it's being used on the Saturn. And in fact, that mode button should have been a sliding switch to make it register as a 6-button controller by default, a 3-button controller, an arcade stick, or a 3D control pad. Give us the choice. And to top it off, where's the turbo function? The other 2 RetroFighters controllers I've tried both had turbo functions. Now sure, those could do with improvements in that area, but the lack of a turbo on this one at all is a clear oversight. I suppose these shortcomings are reflected in its cheaper price point, where it's a good 12 quid cheaper than either of the other 2. If you're after another controller for your Mega Drive, this is a great contender, there's no denying that. But if you need another one for your Saturn, well, a 3D control pad replacement, this ain't. So that was the RetroFighters brawlerGen for the Mega Drive and the Saturn. Even after what I've said about it, if you still think it's right for you, I've left a link in the description to where I got mine. I tend to pick up third-party retro controllers every now and then, so undoubtedly there will be more videos like this in the future. If you want to see how any of those turn out, feel free to subscribe down below. And hey, let everyone know in the comments if you know of any other alternatives for the Mega Drive and the Saturn that are better than this one. Well, I'm going to sign off now anyways, so thanks very much for watching. Leave a like if you like the video, and I'll catch you all next time.